Nigerians are burning the French tricolour. They are hoisting up the Russian tricolour. They're chanting "Long live Putin." The president of Burkina Faso has expelled French troops from his country. Niger has suspended uranium and gold exports to France. Mali and Burkina Faso have officially announced that they will declare war if Western-controlled ECOWAS nations invade Niger. You might simply say it's because they're former French colonies. Of course, they would hate France, but that is a very surface level explanation to explain the insane Francophobia. And while this might explain the chance, France is exploiting our resources, controlling our currencies, down with the French. But what about the embracing of Russia, whose recent presence on the continent includes the infamous diamond mines of the Wagner group at multiple well-documented atrocities? What the hell is that on about? It can't just be the 25 to 50,000 tons of free wheat Putin has just offered, which will probably last a week, if it can get there at all. Okay, the first thing we need to understand is that Russia's physical presence and monetary contributions are anecdotal at best, especially compared to the hundreds of billions of dollars China has loaned to the continent and hundreds of millions of euros the EU allocates as aid to West and Central Africa every year. In fact, Russia only accounts for 1% of foreign direct investment in Africa and trades only about 5% of the EU's total trade with Africa and 6% of China's. It is almost negligible. Where Russia's influence, however, trounces anyone else is soft power. This all started in 2013 to 16 during the expansion of 4G networks across the continent that saw an explosion of internet usage from about a few tens of millions of users to 522 million in 2019. And guess who were among the first media outlets to serve this new gigantic market of very young, for remember the average age of a person in Niger is only about 14, and mostly uneducated but very media hungry users? Russia, Times and Sputnik. Also remember that this was before the peak of clickbait, of BuzzFeed, of Daily Mail, and traditional media outlets still had no clue how to serve social media users. RT and Sputnik meanwhile went all in with aggressively sensationalized stories, and even without stories explicitly aimed at West Africans, soon enough their audience were orders of magnitude larger than the traditional players in the region, being Radio France International and the British Broadcasting Corporation. Being an early adopter and using clickbait isn't enough though. They were also able to co-opt the anti-West, anti-colonial sentiments with pro-Russia sentiments. For example, during the 2014 Ukraine Maidan Revolution, the Syrian civil war, the annexation of Crimea and the sanctions that came after, although the coverage of these topics didn't explicitly target Africans, themes like the antagonism of the West, sanctions against Russia, the double standard, the expansion of NATO, neo-colonial occupation, the victimization of Russia by the West, the looting of Russia's resources in the 90s by the West were all ideas that deeply resonated with post-colonial Africa and really meshed very well with the Pan-African movement, which were quickly gathering speed during this time. Much of this initially was organic, however, as 2018 came around, Russian media outlets really doubled down on French-speaking West Africans by focusing on local topics, told through an anti-West lens. The financial community of Africa, or CFA francs, was a topic that was heavily pushed. For example, it was framed as a reminder of neo-colonialism and how it still affected Africa today. They would also attempt to have an air of objective, straight, trustworthy news, but would sway public opinion, for example, by publishing stories about French atrocities while not covering the even worse crimes of Wagner. They would also talk about the French need of uranium from Niger, and not the Wagner exploitation of Russian resources or the Chinese Belt and Road debt traps. Sputnik and RT became so ubiquitous in the region that local media simply started republishing these stories as straight news. In the same way, in the West, much of our news comes from the wires, referring to Reuters and AP. And soon enough, it wasn't just Sputnik and RT spreading Russian news, but rather the entire media landscape would be singing the same tune. As these 14-year-olds grew into adults by the 2020s, the vast majority of West Africans, people who had never experienced colonization globalization, decolonization, or even the Cold War. They learnt about these topics through the lens of Russian media. They sincerely believed that the West were eager to destroy Africa, that every failure could be blamed on the evil West. France especially became the bogeyman for their poverty and their dismal lives. This, along with genuine French caused grievances such as the operation of Barkhane in Mali in 2022, where the French failed to put down the extremist terror groups, visa restrictions to Europe, lack of Western investments. We have now arrived in the year 2023, where there are multiple organic, seemingly unstoppable, genuine, from the heart, most likely non-Russian funded revolutions and coups against the French throughout West Africa. And all of this happened with Russia barely spending a ruble. Thanks for watching.